Housing equity is the amount of value of your house minus the amount you owe on your house. Housing equity is some form of savings or net asset, net wealth that you have. Is your equity, your home equity increasing? You bet it is. I'm Justin Miller with the Chong Miller Group, and this is the April 2021 real estate market update for Las Vegas, where we look at the prior month's residential, resale, single-family homes for the Las Vegas Valley and surrounding area. Before I get into the numbers, a couple things. One is the newsletter. I've been promising for the past couple months that we would have a newsletter that we'd start sending out. I have been working actually on the newsletter since January, not the content, but rather the template format. I have been stymied by back-end issues in the system that we're using. I finally got so frustrated with that, I handed over that process to Rebecca and to Jason. They've been working diligently over the past actually 2 weeks, put in maybe an additional 50 hours. Yesterday, we finally got the template taken care of. So the template works. That means that we'll put content into it and we'll get the newsletter out, the inaugural issue, about April 15th, and then it should go out every month on about the 15th going forward. If you're not already on our mailing list, please email us at info@Chong Miller Group, and we can put you on the newsletter distribution list. Or, of course, you can ask in the comments section of the video. So, one other thing. I want to talk a little bit briefly about the issue of volatility. We hear frequently that there's volatility in the market. And we hear frequently that Las Vegas has a more volatile housing market than most other areas around the country. So when we think of volatility, we tend to think of price volatility, the volatility of prices of gas at the gas pump, the volatility of the price of milk, the volatility of the stock market, where volatility in the stock market is seen in the level of the S&P or the level of the Dow or the level of the NASDAQ 100. It is pricing volatility. In real estate, however, volatility doesn't materialize in pricing so much as it does in units sold, number of transactions completed. So I want to put a chart here. This is the price for the median single-family home sale in the Las Vegas Valley over the past 15 years, from 2006 to 2021. You'll notice that except at the beginning of the chart where there's a significant dip, we see prices going up, sometimes steeply, sometimes plateauing, sometimes a gradual increase. But generally speaking, we see an upward shaped curve over 9 of the 15 years that are in this chart. Prices in most markets for resale, real estate assets don't actually exhibit significant levels of volatility because, generally speaking, real estate does not trade on a needed liquidity basis. Rather, people can decide not to sell at most points in time, or they can choose to sell when they want to. And so we see pricing in real estate tends to be upward in nature. It tends to sometimes go up gradually, sometimes it's flat, and sometimes it goes up at accelerated rates. Now, the second chart that I'm putting up here, this is unit sales. Again, in the Las Vegas MLS data, this is the Las Vegas Valley and the areas right around it. From 2006 to present, so over a 15-year period of time, and you see this chart is denoted by significant volatility, lots of up and down spikes in this chart. Now, some portion of this is a seasonal pattern. Every year, there's a period of time when activity goes up and a period of time when activity goes down. And so you see that seasonality, but you see the spikes up and down are not equal. You see they're not always exactly at the same rate. We see spikes on spikes and dips on dips. We see jaggedness in this. What we see actually is that the number of transactions that take place during a particular month over time or during a year over time is actually pretty variable. That's what the volatility is. So when people talk about volatility in housing, they may not have any conceptualization of what they're actually saying, but I want to make sure that you understand what actually is volatile in the housing market is number of transactions. It's not actually pricing. So if somebody says to you, I'm worried about getting into the market, the price is really volatile, they don't know what they're talking about. It's not pricing that shows volatility. It's units sold that shows volatility. Okay, so having gotten that out of the way, let's go ahead and look at the data. So the first thing we'll note here is price. March 2021, the median sales price was $360,000. That's up $10,000 from February of 2021, when the median price was $350,000. That's up 2.9% in a single month. Now, kind of interestingly, if we look back 2 months, January of 2021, we're actually up from $340,000. We're up $20,000 in 2 months. That's 5.5% price appreciation in 2 months. If we take a year and we look at number of 2-month segments, there's 6 of them. So we've done one 2-month segment, 5.5% increase. If we extrapolated that, if we just drew a straight line trend out and said there's 5 more 2-month periods, that means 5 more 5.5% periods. That means we'd be up another 27.5% over the next 10 months. We'd be up 30%, 32% over the course of a year. Are we going to do that? I don't think so. I don't think that I don't believe straight line forecasts usually make sense. In this instance, I don't think there's a reason to think it's an exception to that rule. Most forecasters have a really bad track record because they tend to make straight line forecasts, and sometimes they do it on very limited data sets. But I will say what I think is, if you look back again, if you think back again to that pricing chart when we were talking about volatility, that we're in one of those periods of time where we're seeing a significant uptick in pricing. I think that's sustained. I think that will continue for at least the next several months. And when we get through the end of that sustained upward pricing pressure, then we're going to plateau. We're not coming back down. People who think we're coming back down on the prices, you're going to miss out on whatever it is that you're thinking that you're going to get into, because prices are not collapsing. They're not going to collapse. Last year, at the end of March, my brother told me his financial analyst had told him prices are coming down 21%. Go back and look at my videos. I'm one of the few people who was out there saying prices are not going down. Prices are going to be stable to higher because the things that underpin prices remain in place. My brother and his forecaster, his financial analyst, were completely wrong. My forecasts were correct because I was looking at a much larger set of data that took into account exactly those things that drive pricing. So prices are up 2.9% month over month. Year over year, we're up from $315,000 in March of 2020. We're up 14.1%. That's very much in line with the forecasts that I had made back in November of 2020 when I was recording my 2021 market forecast video, that I was projecting price increases that would be of about this magnitude on a year-over-year basis. I think we're actually probably going to exceed that somewhat this year, but it's not going to be a 30% kind of price increase. Now, I want to point out one other thing. I don't usually talk about price per foot. Sometimes I mention it. prices of houses can be divided by the number of square feet to give you a price per foot. Price per foot's a very coarse-grained measure because it does not take into account the quality of the home, the neighborhood, what's around the house and the neighborhood, the upgrades that have been put into the house, all of those kinds of things. But it gives us this metric that we can look at a very coarse-grained level. The price per foot in March of 2021 was $195 per foot. That's up 3.2% from the $189 per foot in February of 2021. It's actually up $11 per foot, or 6% in 2 months. And it is up 14.1% from the $171 per foot that we saw in March of 2020. So price per foot is, in this instance, I'm sharing it with you because it's very confirmatory of the median sale price numbers. Now, what about units sold? Because it doesn't matter if it was only one house and that house was higher in price than a different house last month. Well, it's not one house. The volume, the number of sales in the Las Vegas Realtors MLS from March of 2021 was 3,582. That's up 37.4% from the 2,607 in February of 2021. Now, remember the units sold graph that I showed with volatility, we get these seasonal patterns, and so we expect March is going to be a stronger month every year than February, but we're up 37.4%. That's really strong. Well, actually, let me tell you a little bit more about this number. 3,582 sold single-family residential resale houses. That's the highest monthly sales volume in Las Vegas history. This is actually the highest number of home sales ever recorded in a single month in the Las Vegas Valley, 3,582. We're up 38% from the numbers that we saw last March. Now, remember, last March, in the second half of the month, we started going into shutdown as ordered by the governor. And so the second half of March showed some weakness last year relative to what we would have otherwise expected, mostly in the last week of the month. And you can go back and look. I had recorded a supplemental market update halfway through March just to be able to look at the very beginnings of the impact of the shutdown. So year-over-year comparisons, especially for April and May and somewhat in June, are going to start to look really weird because we're looking last year at really awkwardly constrained numbers and market size issues. But regardless, we're up 38% from where we were a year ago. Now, what about houses for sale? In March of 2021, there were 2,382 houses for sale. So that's sort of an average number during the course of the month of March. That number is down 22.5% from the 3,073 that were for sale during February of 2021. Now, this is the lowest number ever in the digital data. Now, interestingly, houses for sale were down 67.5% from the 7,337 that were for sale on average through the month of March of 2020. We're running a third of normal inventory in this market right now. We're really inventory constrained. Now, let me give you a little more information about this. I'm going to put up here on the screen a search page that I usually don't show, but this is the MLS search page. This is what all realtors have access to search all of the inventory of houses that are for sale in the Las Vegas Valley area. Now, there are additional This can be customized. I've got a whole bunch of additional fields that don't show on here that are sort of below this main page. Some realtors customize this to give them more search capacity. Some probably don't bother, but this is the default search page. Now, you'll notice in the upper right, checked is active listings. So I'm searching through everything that's actively listed. You'll notice below that, the types of property I'm searching for are single family residential, detached houses. So if it's a single family detached house that's listed for sale, it's going to show here in the results. Well, the results show at the very bottom right of this search page. And you'll notice it says results 1,859. Now, prior to October of 2020, I had never seen this number report below 5,000 plus. If there were 5,001 houses, it would show 5,000 plus. If there were 10,000, it would show 5,000 plus. It's now showing 1,859. And I monitor this daily because it helps me to understand what's going on in the market. It helps me to empower my clients to make the best decisions with regard to their listings or with regard to their purchase strategies. The lowest number I've seen was about 3 weeks ago, was 1,752 single family homes that were available for sale in the Las Vegas Valley. That number, however, seems to have stabilized. It's been reporting for the past few weeks, basically between 1,850 and 1,890 houses for sale. So, and you can see 1,859 on April 6th as I did the screenshot of this search. So we're sitting in this super constrained inventory period. By the way, months supply, I don't really report that number any longer because it tends to jump around in awkward ways, but we're well below 1 month's worth of supply. How do I know that? Because we had 3,582 sold and we have 2,382 available for sale on average during the course of the month of March. Now, let's look at a couple more pieces of information. Pending home sales. Remember when buyer wants to buy a house and we find the right house for them and seller is willing to negotiate and get into a contract with that buyer, that gives us a purchase contract. That's called a pending home sale. It's pending until it's actually closed. It may take, so houses go into pending, or they go into escrow. The escrow process, it's actually super hard, even with an all-cash transaction in a non-HOA neighborhood, to do a transaction in less than 10 days. We've done one in 5 days, we did another in 7, but it's really hard because you still have to do the title search to make sure the seller owns the property and can actually sell it. You still have to do the inspection. There are things that still have to occur. Typically, the escrow period is about 30 days, 30 to 40. And so during that entire escrow period, the contract is in a pending, or the sale is in a pending status. So this says there are 3,680 pending sales, contracts that are written between buyer and seller that have not yet closed. This is at the end of March of 2021. This is up 15%, 15.5% from the 3,186 pending contracts at the end of February of 2021. It's up 93.5% from the 1,902 pending contracts that we had at the end of March 2020. Now, I said that the COVID issues, the lockdown issues, will start to manifest themselves in the data. As we got toward the end of March of last year, we were shut down and there were buyers who were dropping out of contract. There were sellers who were dropping out of contract. And so pending home sales, that number started to decrease from what we would have been seeing otherwise. So we're looking at twice almost the number of pending contracts right now relative to where we were at the end of March of 2021. So Pending sales, very strong. I will point out that number is actually above the actual sold units in March. 3582 sold and 3680 pending. We're 98 units higher on pending. Very, very strong. Now, not all pending contracts close. There are reasons things drop out of contract. There could be a bad appraisal. There could be a bad inspection. There could be a loan that doesn't get approved, things like that. But the overwhelming majority of pending contracts do close in normal circumstances. So April, therefore, this is sort of a forward-looking statistic. It's rooted in data that's occurred, contracts already written, but it's forward-looking in the sense that it implies what's going to close next month. Well, what about new listings? You can't just rely on what's in the database, the MLS, because it will end up being completely depleted. We need new listings coming in. That's new houses listed for sale. There were 3,596 new listings that entered the database in March of 2021. That's up 16.1% from the 3,098 that entered in February of 2021. That is, as we saw on that chart that showed the volatility, units listed for units that were closed. If we looked at units listed for sale, we'd see the same kind of volatility. There is a seasonal pattern, and so we would expect to increase from February. But it's an interesting increase, because if we look at March of 2020, the number of new listings then was 3,601. 5 units more than what we got in March of 2021. So we're down fractionally 0.1% from what we saw a year ago, but we're very much in line with what we would expect. Now, I had forecast back in, or predicted back in the November recording of the forecast video for 2021, we'd start seeing buyers materialize in January more rapidly and at a higher rate than sellers, and that it would probably be about May or June that we start seeing sellers really coming back into the market. So clearly buyers showed up first. Clearly sellers have been showing up only seasonally, sort of what we would expect in a normal year. I think in May and June, we will start to see increased numbers of sellers entering into the market, increased numbers of new listings entering into the MLS data set. That should provide some level of relief for the rapidly increasing prices, and some additional support for greater numbers of home sales. But we're not going to see a flood of inventory coming in. There's nothing that indicates a flood is sitting there waiting on the sidelines to come into this market. That's an ephemeral belief. It's not going to happen. So if you're a buyer, please reach out, find a real estate agent to represent you. We, of course, represent buyers, and we do so very well. But in this market, you need a professional, somebody who's experienced in this market, helping buyers get into contract. We're seeing multiple offers with every buyer that we represent out there, and we're seeing multiple offers on every listing that we have out there. It's really important that you have somebody who understands how to maneuver through this market, to how to set you up to be most prepared to be able to succeed in getting into contract in this market. Clearly, there are people getting into contract, but I will tell you, for every one of those 3,680 pending contracts, there were 2 to 10 others who were buyers who were offering on those properties that are not in contract. So you're competing with a lot of people out there right now on this very limited inventory. Get representation. Remember, the seller's paying for your representation as a buyer. Get somebody to represent you who really knows what they're doing and really understands how this market works. If you're a seller, you're sitting on increasing amount of equity. You have the capacity to do things that you didn't have last month and certainly didn't have 2 months ago. And there are a lot of buyers out there who are looking to buy houses. Make sure, though, that you have an agent who understands, again, how this market's functioning, because there are people, properties are drawing multiple offers. If they're priced right, if they're priced too low, they're drawing multiple offers. But we've seen listing agents get their clients to list low for the purpose of drawing multiple offers, where they receive multiple offers, but because of the low price on the property, all those offers are anchored to the low price. And it's causing them to get into a contract that's appraising that's appraising above contract price. That means that some sellers are leaving money on the table according to the appraisal, and appraisers generally don't appraise high. If you get an appraisal that comes in above contract price, that means the seller has made some significant mistakes, probably because their agent is not counseling them well. On the other hand, if you're priced too high in this market, the market might catch up to you, but buyers are not going out of their minds. They're not rushing into transactions that don't make any kind of sense. And so there are houses out there, even with very tight inventory, even with multiple offers at all price points across the inventory, there are houses that are sitting out there 100 days on market, 200 days on market. I was looking at a listing the other day, 9 months on market. So, you really want to make sure you have a listing agent who can help you. And again, reach out to us. We'd be happy to help you. We've been very busy. We actually, Chong Miller Group was flat in 2020 in terms of our transaction volume and dollar volume relative to 2019. It was not a down year for us. We were basically flat. 2021, the market's growing, but we've been growing substantially more than the market. We did more business, volume and dollar volume, in the first quarter of 2021 than we did in the entirety of 2020 or 2019. That's why we've hired Rebecca. We're growing, we're busy, but we always have the ability to take on new clients, and it's why I hired Rebecca onto our team, to make sure that we have the ability to interact with and take care of all of our clients and go through the transactions seamlessly and smoothly and professionally. So please reach out to us. We'd be happy to talk with you. We'd be happy to help you in your real estate adventures. Please also subscribe to our videos. Let us know if you want the newsletter, if you're not already on our mailing list. And please let other people know. Let your friends and family and colleagues know. If they need help in real estate, we're here to help them. Please have them reach out to us. We'd be happy to take care of their needs and provide them the same level of professional, high-quality service that we provide to our established clients. I am Justin Miller with the Chong Miller Group. I look forward to talking with you soon. Thank you.